introduction. So, hello everyone. Welcome to another exciting day of masterclasses hosted by the IAPC&M. I'm your host, Elena Nedeva, APC, and I'm delighted to be here with you. In recognition of National Stress Awareness Day, we are hosting a special members-only masterclass series designed to help coaches strengthen their own self-care and resilience. This is a masterclass series packed with practical, supportive, and nourishing sessions that put your well-being first. This is your space to pause, reset, and replenish. Our first guest today was Dr. Rodney King. He shared with us simple, evidence-informed breathwork and microsomatic practices that left us craving for more. Up next, speaking is Caroline Carroll, a somatic coach and EFT practitioner who helps women move from anxiety, self-doubt, and disconnection to feeling grounded, clear, and confident in who they are. With a background in nervous system regulation and trauma-informed coaching, Caroline guides clients to reconnect with their bodies, release long-held stress patterns, and cultivate lasting inner calm through a body-up approach to healing. Driven by her mission to help high-achieving women find peace beneath the pressure, Caroline blends science, intuition, and deep presence in her work. Caroline's teachings empower women to move beyond coping and step into a state of alignment and ease, where clarity, energy, and self-trust naturally flourish. In today's masterclass, The Language of Nervous System, we will explore how the body communicates through sensations, emotions, and energy, and how tools like emotional freedom techniques, also known as EFT, and somatic practices can help regulate, release, and restore balance from the inside out. Without further ado, over to you, Caroline. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
To have you with us.
Thank you, Elena, for the introduction as well. Can everybody see my screen okay? Is it sharing okay, the presentation?
Your screen is visible.
Great, so the presentation is visible.
That is correct.
Great, okay. So thank you for introducing me, Elena. As Elena mentioned, I work somatically and through energy practices as a coach, as I believe that the mind and body and soul are all connected, and the nervous system is the central point for this. What I'd really like to do to begin with is just to do a grounding session for us all to come into this space. For myself as well, because it's the language of the nervous system and it's about regulating your nervous system. So understandably, I'm a little bit nervous today, and this would help me, but also for you, because I think wherever you've come from, whether you were in the earlier talk or whether you've come from a busy morning already, we can all benefit from some grounding. So I'd invite you just to close your eyes and take a deep breath in. Breathing in and out. And in and out. And in and out. And take this time to drop into your body. Just noticing what's there, not trying to change anything. Noticing part of you that may feel tension, any parts of the body. And maybe there are parts of you that feel neutral or calm. Sometimes the calm can be just in your fingers. or you may notice tension in your toes. These are areas that without dropping in, we wouldn't even notice. Now take the time just to release any of that tension. Letting it expand. Feeling any movement in your body of energy, tension, and allowing it to move. Notice your feet on the ground, connected to the earth. And I invite you to imagine some roots coming from your feet right down into the earth. And feeling that connection as far as the roots can go, as far as you can see. Feeling that connection of energy coming up from the earth, through your feet and into your body. Feeling that energy moving through all of your body, right through to the top of your head. And imagine a colour now of energy coming from the top of your head, surrounding you. And that colour moving into your body. Allowing that calming energy to fill you from the top of your head to the tips of your toes. And taking some deep breaths in and out. And in and out. And in and out. And when you're ready, coming back into the room and opening your eyes. And just notice the difference that grounding exercise has made for your nervous system, how that feels in the body. And being aware that it only took a few minutes. And this is some of what we'll be talking about today, the importance of nurturing our nervous system. And why is that important to you and your coaching practice? So I'd like to make this interactive. If you'd like, you can add anything to the chat if you've got questions as we go through. I can't actually see the chat as I'm presenting, but you're able to add whatever you want to the chat, and we can then look at the questions at the end. But also, I might ask a few questions as we go through. We'll also be doing a demo of EFT, which is tapping, emotional freedom technique. So firstly, just understanding a little bit more about the nervous system. It can be seen as the conductor of everything internally. And it's communicating from the outside in. And it helps you to stay safe, handle stress, and connect with others. It could be the driver behind a lot of your behaviours, your beliefs, emotions, and thoughts. So it is a really important part of our whole system, and it's a part that we need to nurture, especially as coaches, because our nervous system can be triggered by so many different things. And it unconsciously manages your breathing, heart rate, digestion, and energy. And what a lot of people don't know, it also contributes to your hormone regulation and to the health of your immune system. So just a quick story about myself. I used to work in corporate. I was a senior leader in a corporate for 14 years. And what I didn't realise that during that time, I was bouncing between nervous system states and was hardly ever in a rest and connect state. And that really did affect my hormones and the health of my immune system, although I didn't realise at the time that's what it was. And so when you nurture your nervous system, you're also nurturing everything else inside you. Your digestive system, your cardiovascular system, and as I mentioned, the hormone and immune system. And there are three main states. There's the fight or flight, and this is what they call the sympathetic branch. And that's when you feel stressed or on alert. And this is where I was a lot of the time when I worked in corporate. I was constantly up in that state, you know, thriving from the adrenaline, but not letting myself rest or connect, which is the ventral vagal state. And then there's the freeze or shut down. And that's when life feels too much. It's called dorsal vagal. And that can happen in cycles in the day. So I would quite often go into freeze or shut down on an evening after a really hectic day of being in fight or flight. And I just couldn't speak to anybody on an evening. All I wanted to do was just slump on the chair, have a glass of wine, and perhaps watch Netflix for a couple of hours before trying to get to sleep, which never happened. And so it was really important that once I learned how to rest and connect, I was no longer bouncing between these two states. And it made such a difference to how I perceive and enjoy life. So we also need to look at the brain when we think of the nervous system as well. As we all know, the brain is very complex, but the simplest version of it is that there's three parts. There's the reptilian brain, which is our oldest part, and that is for survival and instinct. And then we've got a newer part of the brain, which is the limbic system, which is where all our emotions sit and are processed. And then we've got the very newest part of the brain, which is our neocortex, which is where we can think logically, we have the higher thinking skills, and that's where we obviously develop speech, but also how we differ from animals. And the nervous system is speaking at first to the reptilian brain. So it's picking up the instinct and the survival before it moves into any of the other parts of the brain. And so when we become into fight or flight, or especially freeze, this part of the brain, the neocortex, actually shuts down. And that's why sometimes you think, oh, I've got brain fog or I can't think straight. It's because you're in this reptilian part of the brain. And this can also be what you may notice with your clients, that they're no longer thinking straight. They're really finding it difficult to think at all. And they're in this reptilian part. It's because the nervous system has spoken, has triggered that, and has said, okay, this isn't safe. And so when we're always in this part or trying to talk to somebody in this part, we're not communicating with the reptilian brain, the limbic system. We're only communicating with the neocortex, which is quite often then in shutdown if it doesn't feel safe. So there's 8 senses that the nervous system speaks to. And I know we all know the 5 senses, which is smell, sight, hearing, taste, and touch. And quite often with mindfulness, we will look at those areas to take our client or ourselves into, because we know that helps to calm the nervous system. However, we don't always know about the other areas, the other 3 senses that are all equally as important. And so you have the vestibular part, which is all about balance. And this is about how you sense your body in space, how you're moving, how you're staying upright. And so the nervous system is talking to that part also. And that is also classed as the part that, you know, if you were off balance, then it would also help, that it would also come to light that the nervous system feels dysregulated because of that. And then there's something we call the sixth sense. And you've probably heard of the sixth sense, but it's called proprioception. And this is where we really look at all the different things about how we relate to ourselves and the world. And the nervous system is talking to that as well. And so this could really be where trauma or experiences, past experiences, come into play. And so the nervous system will be communicating with that area based on your past experiences or your client's past experiences, and then taking that information in internally to say either this is safe or it's not safe. It's always asking the question, am I safe or not safe? And then there's interoception, which is how it makes sense internally of what you've brought in through the senses. And again, this is all communicated through the lens of, well, what's happened in the past? How did I feel safe before? You know, what was driving me to feel not safe before? And it's very, very fast and unconscious how it makes these decisions. So by talking to these areas when you're a coach, and you can only really do this through the body, you can't talk to it through the thinking mind. By talking to that area, you're actually reaching much deeper into that client's whole physiology and biology. So what does a dysregulated nervous system look like? Well, there can be lots of ways that it shows up, but your body will always talk in some way. And quite often, if we're in fight or flight or freeze, we're ignoring what our body's saying. We quite often push through. You know, we might get brain fog, but we push through. We might feel exhaustion and fatigue, but we continue pushing through. And there's other areas like the body aches, constant colds, often feeling irritable and reactive, neglecting your needs, extremes in appetite, so hungry, not hungry at all, experience anxiety and worry often, and difficulty concentrating. And, you know, from my experience, when I was working on this alert state all the time, as soon as I stopped for a holiday, I would catch a cold or flu. So quite often my holidays were spent feeling pretty ill. And this is because my system had been so dysregulated, and I was pushing through that it didn't know what to do. You know, once I stopped, it was like, okay, I'm going to allow this person to be ill. And at weekends, I would quite often feel ill as well, because I just sort of was so much on alert all the time. But at weekends, sometimes I would slow down a bit. So there's a thesis called Window of Tolerance, which is actually based on Dr. Dan Siegel's awareness. And this is about where we feel comfortable. So where we feel comfortable, grounded, safe, that's our window of tolerance. When we don't feel that, we can then go into fight or flight, which is the anxiety, anger, fear part, or we can go into freeze, which is depression, fatigue, checked out, disconnected. And you might recognize some of these symptoms in your clients or even in yourself. And the window of tolerance is different for every person. So when you're communicating to the nervous system, it's about being aware of, well, what's going to send me over the edge? What's going to send me into overwhelm? And that window of tolerance can be very, very small if somebody's been through trauma or is going through trauma, or they're stressed out completely or in burnout. It can be very small, but you can actually expand the window of tolerance, and it's under your control to do that. And that's about bringing yourself back to where you feel safety, where you feel comfortable, where you feel connected and grounded. But you need to do it as often as you can. So it's about those micro points in your day where you can bring yourself back to your breath, if that helps, or you can be more present, or you can be more mindful, and whatever is self-soothing to you to do that. And you can also help your clients to do the same, to expand their window of tolerance. And I've noticed that it really helps to show them this so that they can understand what that means and why sometimes they might go into fight or flight or freeze in a similar situation to somebody else who doesn't. You know, they're fine with it, but they're not. And that way it stops them beating themselves up, because it's just their nervous system talking. It's the way their nervous system has learnt to communicate. And so why co-regulation is important. We're always co-regulating with others, especially obviously in a coaching situation, but even when we're with anybody else, we're always co-regulating. And an example of this might be, you know, you may have noticed that when you go into a room, you might notice tension before anything is even said. And you're noticing that the nervous system is off somewhere. Somebody's nervous system or a number of people's nervous system is off somewhere in that room because you're feeling the tension. And you can bring co-regulation into the room by bringing a calming presence there. And this is how you bring that into your coaching sessions as well. Because the safer you can make a client feel, the more they're going to open up, the more clearer they're going to feel, and the more they're going to be able to process their emotions and be clearer in their mind. And so when they bring their storm to the coaching session, it can meet your calm, and then the co-regulation occurs. Obviously, if you're going into a session where you're dysregulated, that it's going to be very difficult to co-regulate in a calm way. You're bringing your dysregulated nervous system into the session. So part of what I do before every coaching session is to have a practice that helps me feel grounded before I go into a session. And one of the my favourites is actually lying on the floor with my legs up the wall, which helps to stimulate the vagus nerve and just allow thoughts to come and go and breathe. And I actually did that 5 minutes before I came onto here. So you've probably got that image now of me with my legs up the wall. And another area that I practice a lot is EFT, and I am a practitioner. But EFT is emotional freedom technique, and you're actually tapping on different parts of your body which are related to the meridian points. And we like to call it acupuncture without the needles. And I've seen some real breakthroughs with clients and myself through just doing the tapping, especially when they become triggered, perhaps in a session, or they're feeling resistance, or just don't feel stuck and don't know the answers to things. This can really help. So I thought we could do a tapping session now together. So I'm just going to stop sharing so we can do this together. Let me just make sure. Have I stopped sharing just to make sure?
Yes, you have.
Yes, I never know.
Mm.
Technology gets me all the time. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is firstly, I'll go through the tapping point so you can see where we're going to be tapping. You may have done tapping before, but if you haven't, I'll just go through them briefly. So there's a tapping point here, which is the karate chop. And this helps to release powerlessness and to set new boundaries. So we always start there with people. And then there's the eyebrow, which is just above the eyebrow, and you can use one hand or both hands. And this is to help reduce worry and frustration. And it also promotes calm. And then there's the side of the eye. Yeah, it's a good idea to take glasses off if you've got those on. And that can release anger and promote emotional balance. And then there's under the eye. And this helps to release overwhelm and fear and promotes relaxation. And then there's under the nose. And this helps to release sadness and confusion and also promotes well-being. And then under the mouth. And this helps to release shame and guilt and promotes self-acceptance. And then you've got the collarbone, which helps to release physical pain, anxiety, promotes healing. And then you've got under the arm, which is actually just at the sort of bra strap area. And this helps to boost feelings of self-worth and self-empowerment. And then you've got the top of the head. And that helps to clear mental fog, brings clarity and wisdom. And if you know about the chakras, that makes sense. You know that you're tapping on the crown chakra. And that brings the wisdom. So what we can do now is just go through and I'll talk out loud. Normally, if you're with a client, you would ask them to repeat after you out loud. But as there's a group of us, I would suggest that you just say it internally, repeat it to yourself internally rather than saying it out loud. But if you were with a client, then it helps to say it out loud. And this is also connecting to the nervous system. So the meridian points also connect to the nervous system. And it's helping with all the levels of the brain. So you're going from the reptilian brain through tapping, you're processing emotions in the limbic brain, and it then helps to clear the mind in the neocortex. So if you ever have a client who feels stuck or frustrated or anger or sad, whatever it is that comes up, it helps to do some tapping with them because it just clears things so that you can then coach from a clearer level. Okay, so if we start on the side of the hand, we'll start off with this feeling of perhaps, you know, any overwhelm that you felt more recently. So the setup statement is here. Even though I feel overwhelmed, just repeat this in your mind. And I feel this in my body. And it makes me feel dysregulated. I accept how I feel right now. I'll say that again. Even though I feel this overwhelm, and I feel it in my body, and it makes me feel dysregulated. I accept how I feel right now. One more time. Even though I feel this overwhelm, and I feel it in my body, and it makes me feel dysregulated, I accept how I feel right now. And then we'll just move to above the eyebrows. This overwhelm. Side of the eyes. I feel it in my body. Under the eyes. It makes me feel dysregulated. Under the nose. I feel the tension in my body. Under the mouth. I hear the thoughts in my mind. Collarbone. I feel the emotions. Under the arm. I feel it so much in my body. Top of the head. This overwhelm. Above the eyes. I'm curious if I can accept these feelings in my body. Side of the eyes. Perhaps I can accept that I'm overwhelmed. Under the eyes. Perhaps it's safe to accept this feeling. Under the nose. Perhaps it's safe just to let it be. Under the mouth. Perhaps my body can relax. Collarbone. Perhaps it's safe to relax. Under the arm. Breathing into this overwhelm. Top of the head. Feeling safe to let it be. Above the eyes. The eyebrows. I'm feeling safe. Side of the eyes. I am safe. Under the eyes. Letting go. Under the nose. Feeling my body relax. Under the mouth. I am safe. Collarbone. I am safe and connected. Under the arm. Feeling my breath. Top of the head. Knowing I am safe. I am safe. I am safe. Stop tapping and take some deep breaths in and out. And in and out. And in and out. What you might find with people that you do this with your clients, that there might be some yawning. Yeah, there might be some even burping. It's signs of things releasing. I had to stop myself yawning then, because whenever I tap now, I always yawn. People think I'm bored, but it's the release.
Yeah.
And
So
you
do
might
I
find.
actually, Caroline.
Do you? Yeah. Yeah.
Extensive yawning, but it's just so comforting for me.
It is, yes, yeah. And it's a sign that your body's saying you're safe, and your nervous system is starting to let things go and say, yeah, perhaps it is safe. But we always start off with what is the trigger, firstly, and that can be for yourself or your client, and work through that to acknowledge that trigger. We're not bypassing the trigger, we're allowing it to be there. We can, once you deep in it with your client, you can ask them where are they feeling it, in their bodies. They start to recognize where they're feeling the overwhelm, because quite often we'll go through life and not even know we're overwhelmed. Unless you're connected with your body, you're not going to know that. So it's about bringing your client back into that and recognizing that, and you can tap through those feelings. And you can go through, if something shifts, you can change that, change direction with that as well. So it is much easier when you're on a one-to-one, because you can really connect with people. And it can make all the difference to how they feel and how clearer they feel with whatever goals you're trying to help them achieve. So let's just go back to sharing. You'll let me. Can you see that okay?
Yes, we can.
You can. Right. Okay, so that was the demo of EFT. Okay. So this is how I present the nervous system. When your nervous system feels safe, clarity returns, the brain fog clears, energy flows, and connection deepens. Safety is the foundation of transformation. And I think we're bringing that safety in all the time with our clients, but we also need to nurture it ourselves. And so for me, and what I invite my clients to do, is find something that nurtures them every day, that helps them bring that sense of safety. And it's the micro safety, those small micro practices, which could be just a couple of minutes up to 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day, that make all the difference. And it's helping them to recognize when they might be in freeze or when they might be in fight or flight, as well as recognizing that in yourself. And I went through many years of being, I would say, a lot in fight or flight, and then, bouncing to freeze without that ventral vagal hardly at all. So my window of tolerance was very, very small. And it did reach a burnout for me, with lots of physical symptoms. And so it's recognizing if a client is presenting with some physical symptoms that are not being diagnosed, as well, even if they have been diagnosed as a clinical disease, it can still be your nervous system. And nurturing your nervous system can change everything. It certainly did for me, and I'm seeing that with my clients as well. And it's only a year ago that I actually moved out of corporate to do coaching full time, although I've been doing this work for 5 years in sort of the energy field. And the difference in me has been huge in every part of my life. And so I can only say how important this has been to me. And it's quite simple once you know what you're doing, and you start to recognize it more in other people as well, and you can be more compassionate with other people because of the way why they're presenting the way they are. So if somebody's angry with you, you can think, okay, they're in fight or flight at the moment. If somebody shuts down with you, then you can say, okay, they're in freeze at the moment. Their window of tolerance, it's been squeezed and they've got overwhelmed, and that's okay. As long as you know your own boundaries as well, because boundaries is so important as well. So just coming to the end of my presentation, and then also time just to ask questions. I'd just like to share with you what I'd like a call to action to be, to invite a call to action. I have a free tool for you. It's a guide of regulation techniques, and you can scan it from the QR code there. And it will give you 5 really powerful regulation techniques that have worked for me and have worked for my clients. And I would say, invite you to use one tool to nurture your nervous system daily, and you will notice the difference as long as you're consistent with it, and as long as you start noticing your own sense of, well, where is my window of tolerance? What's brought me into overwhelm? What's triggering me? And what micro nervous system regulation techniques can I bring in to make that difference? And it really does make a difference. It's a passionate topic for me because of how it's changed my life and how it's changing others. So I'll stop sharing and ask if there's any questions that people would like to ask. It's nice to see people and get all the hearts. Hiya. Hi, Hannah.
Am I okay to go to ask you a question? Thank you so
Of
much,
course.
Caroline. That was really, really interesting. And actually the timing of this is really good because I've just started to think more about kind of nervous system stuff
Yes.
in sort of my coaching. I mean, I'm very, very early days and just kind of just starting to get a coaching practice going. But I've got 2 questions for you. The first question, are there any kind of, do you have any recommendations of sort of like almost short, like taster courses for EFT that, perhaps like as coaches we could do so that we can bring it into our practice as like a short practice at the beginning of a session, for example, but we sort of know enough to know what we're doing?
Yes, yeah. There's certainly an app that I would recommend, which is called the Tap-In Solution. I don't know whether you've heard of that. And there is a lot of free tap-in sessions on there, and it will show you from the very basics as well about tapping. You can pay for it annually as well, or monthly if you want to get more out of it, but that's certainly, there's a lot of free ones on there which I recommend to my clients, and I would also recommend for yourself as well to try that. And you can try that out then yourself as well, so you feel more comfortable with doing it. It actually doesn't take very long to get used to the points and going through it. What probably goes a little bit deeper is what is the setup statement with your client, if you're going to do that with your client. And that's really just asking questions about, well, what is the trigger? What's going on for you now? Where do you get them to drop into the body? Where do they feel it? And that might take a bit of time because, you know, they may not be used to doing that. But really just perhaps closing their eyes and just letting them feel into that. Where do they feel it in the body? What does it feel like in the body? Could they describe it? You know, is it like a heavy stone? Is it like I don't know, a tightness, you know, and quite often they'll come up with something that it feels like. What emotion is behind that? And those are the three main questions. And then you can usually do a setup statement from that using those three, you know, questions. Trigger, how you feel it in the body and the emotion. And then tapping through that. So you're doing the setup statement, which you do 3 times, and then doing tapping, just using parts of that. So that, you know, I feel sadness, feel tightness in my stomach, you know, and repeating some of that so that they can feel it. And then perhaps taking a breather and then going back into it to see, well, perhaps I can get curious about changing this. What would it feel safe to change this? And then going into I feel safe. So you're going through a process. But the tapping solution is very good. And there's a book as well, the tapping solution book, which is really good. There's a lot of videos on YouTube as well.
Yes, I've done sort of various videos on YouTube, you know, somebody talking it through, but it's always good, isn't it? Just to, and I've noted down like all what you were saying about the points and how they relate to sort of different emotions. Because my second question was, and really actually you've probably just answered it, because this sort of it's come to my mind more. So I coach Muslim women. And I was on a call with a lady who is really, really struggling with the ritual prayer 5 times a day. And she was talking about this feeling, you know, she said she knows she has to, but it's like this huge, heavy weight on her chest. And, you know, there's kind of things going on for her. Like she was really kind of taught it through a place of fear and punishment if she didn't do it. So it's completely understandable. But I'm thinking, you know, that got me really thinking of, and again, this is why I say it's really good timing, because I thought, right, what can I give my clients? Because that's quite a familiar story that I hear. But something like this to release that, you know, that negative energy around it, that negative association, to actually come then to prayer from a place of safety and of love and of calm and presence and all of that. So I think that this would be a really, really lovely practice for that.
Yeah, and I think, you know, prayer from a place of safety can be very nurturing for the nervous system as well. So it's perhaps looking at it from a different perspective, you know, and I was brought up as quite strict Catholic, and, you know, so churches and the Catholic religion quite scares me now. And, you know, so I can understand that, because there's a lot of rituals there that felt very forced, I felt, you know, from my perspective as a child, and a bit scary. And so I can understand that. But if you can see it from a place of nurturing yourself, and co-regulating with others as well through that nurturing, then it can bring up a different viewpoint, and you can look at it more from a place of safety, you know, and bringing that into your body rather than the fear.
It's brilliant. Thank you so much. I'm definitely gonna put this straight into practice. Thank you.
Oh, good. Thank you.
So before I read out Gemma's question, and she's asked me to read it out because she's not feeling very well today.
That's fine.
You might want to stop sharing your screen.
Am I still sharing? Stop sharing. There we go.
Great. Fantastic. So I will read Gemma's question now. So she's inquiring, what sorts of pressure should you use? I.e., underarm would be stronger than top of head / under eye.
Yeah, I think the answer to that would be whatever feels comfortable for yourself and the client. You know, because it's not, you don't want to cause any pain, that's for sure, or feel uncomfortable doing it. What I find is that, well, for myself and others, quite a lot of pressure you put on your collarbone. It feels like it's more of an area where you want to tap a bit harder. And sometimes on the top of your head as well, I find, is, you know, where you feel like it just, the words seem to make you want to, really go into it a bit more deeper. But I wouldn't say that, you know, that you need to say that to clients or yourself. It's entirely up to you. Sometimes when the words feel stronger, you know, and they resonate with you more, then you might find yourself tapping harder. And as long as it's not uncomfortable, as long as there's no pain, then it's absolutely fine, you know, whatever pressure feels right for you. Hopefully that answers. Is it Gemma's question? Is it?
Yes, that was Gemma's question. She's also very appreciative of the session, and shares that this has come at the perfect time for her.
Oh, that's wonderful. And just going back to Hannah's question, I have thought of a course that actually I did, which is EFT level 1. And you can do EFT level 2 if you want to become a practitioner, but it's by a company called Becoming 360. So that's the words becoming and then the number 360. And Lisa McMurtry and Joe Cantle are both master coaches with the IAPC&M, great mentors as well. And they do the EFT level 1, which is more about the basics of EFT. And then you can go through different levels. But that's where I did my training, and then did EFT level 2, so I could become a practitioner.
Thank you. I'll look at that. Thank you.
Yeah. But I would certainly say, you know, if you're just doing tapping with clients, you can't really go wrong. You know, it does, once they get used to it, it does bring a sense of calm and safety into the body. And because as a coach, I'm sure you're very intuitive and you'll be looking at the body language and seeing how they are. Then you'll notice if it's triggering anything, and you can always say to them, look, if this feels too triggering, just let me know, or we can stop and breathe. So, you know, you can't go wrong with it, but that's certainly a good course, EFT level 1 with Joe Cantle, Becoming 360. Any other questions? No?
I actually have a question, Caroline, because I still am in my full-time corporate role where I lead high-performing recruiters. So the pressure can often be very, very high.
Can you imagine? Yeah.
I've recently been, and we work in an online environment, so it's a truly international team. People from Costa Rica, Nigeria, India, in Bulgaria.
Yeah.
So lately, I've been noticing the need for me to implement something in my team meetings. I've been thinking about EFT. I've been thinking about 5 to 10 minute meditation. But to be very frank with you, how do I put this in words? I'm so hesitant because I know the impact, right? I know this will make a difference.
Yes.
But I'm so hesitant to make the first step because very often in corporate, such practices are not well perceived. So
at
the crossroad, because I know this will release help release some of the stress, increase the, even encourage people to practice a bit of that, even become curious to practice during their own time. But this for you, I'm like, I'm really stuck, because I'm like, well, what if, you know, people start talking, you know, there is this manager who is like asking us to meditate. But so what's your view of that?
Yes, I could completely understand. Firstly, I worked for a Fortune 500 global company, and I felt that, you know, would people perceive it well? I did start bringing in smaller teams, you know, on some of our Zoom calls and team meetings, some of the practices. Sometimes it might be not to call it meditation, but to call it a practice that helps everybody bring their best version of themselves to the meeting, and helps to clear the mind. And you can say, you know, when we're jumping, because if it's anything like I was working in, I could have eight to 10 team meetings a day, jumping on one to the other, and not being able to clear my mind at all. And so you can explain that, you know, when we're jumping from one task to another, or one meeting to another, it's hard to bring your best version to the table, and it's hard to have a clear mind, because your mind is somewhere else. Your mind is still on the past task or the past meeting. So you could call it a quick practice that clears the mind and is known to clear the mind. And just do a breathe in, you know, closing the eyes for a few minutes, breathe in, feeling the feet on the ground, bottom on the chair, you know, that type of practice. I think it would be probably a step too far to try and bring in tapping at that point.
Yeah, I think so.
But they, you know, over time, and they can feel the difference, then, you know, you can bring that in. And a lot of corporate companies now are more open to the well-being side of things. They will have apps that they're probably promoting where you can go and get this type of well-being, but people aren't using them because they're still too busy.
Yes. Yeah.
I had all the apps, but I was still too busy. I thought, I haven't got 2 minutes to go on and up and do a breathing exercise. But it's so needed, and it can make everybody think straighter and help them to see things more clearly and be more productive. Because we all want, you know, especially in corporate, that's the word, isn't it? You've got to be productive. Is how can you bring that, you know, the more production is having a clearer mind. If you don't have a clearer mind, you're never going to work at the best level.
That's true.
So maybe trying something like that to begin with.
And
try it with a team that you feel safe with first. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for responding.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Well, Caroline, it was a true pleasure hosting you today. I have inserted your Facebook into the chat
group. Yes.
For the participants to click on if they wish.
Yes.
So that's there. I also have links to some of the courses you were recommending.
Yes, correct.
What is the best way for people to stay in touch with you?
Yeah, I think join the Facebook group, because I put all my workshops on there, post most days with content that's useful, and any programs that are up and coming I'll post in there as well. So the best way is through my Energy Inspired Coaching Facebook group, which is the link you put on, and I'd welcome any new members.
That's fantastic. Great. All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you once more, Caroline.
Thank you,
hope
Elaine.
everyone has a great rest of the day.